What's up, crew? Welcome to Filming in Progress, the show that takes you backstage into the world of local businesses and the people who make them shine. We're excited to welcome Aislinn Grant to the podcast today. Aislinn's journey from making cake-shaped bath bombs to leading a successful branding agency showcases her creativity and entrepreneurial spirit. Aislinn, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
How did you first get into design work?
It's kind of a long story. I'll try and keep it somewhat interesting. But so when I was in university, I was in business school, and I had a cake-shaped bath bomb company, which is kind of like a wild deviation. I've always had businesses since I was in high school. And in this year that I was in school, there was a pitch competition. And I had met someone, Ray, who's kind of like, he was like the head of the innovation and entrepreneurship department at MRU, the school I went to. He basically convinced me to go into this pitching competition, even though that was my worst fear. And I did go into the pitching competition and I won 10 grand, essentially. Then I spent that 10 grand on hiring a branding agency to do my packaging and brand. And that was like the first time that I had seen that process and been through anything like that. And I immediately was like, this is what I want to do. Like I had kind of gone through so many doors to that point. I was like a musician, I worked in retail, I worked in robotics. There was all these kind of different paths I took that led me, now I can kind of see how they all contributed to where I'm at now. But I felt kind of all over the place and scattered. And then I saw this team doing branding and was like, that, like I could do that. So then I just started teaching myself design. And then I closed down my business, quit my job, and I was finishing university. And then I just started freelance designing. And I kind of just started telling people, like they'd ask me, what do you do? And I'd say, like, I'm a designer, even though I was absolutely shit at that time. But I think I just kind of owned that title, and then it just started to take off. I just started to get like little clients here and there, and then, yeah. And then I eventually started an agency with this really talented designer, and we ran that for 4 years, and then we closed that down, and then I started this one. So it's kind of the short version of the story.
I love it. So you had a couple of businesses before this one.
Yeah.
And was it branding in particular that kind of like drew you to, that you were like, that's the one, even though you had already had experience in other avenues before that?
It was, because it was the first thing, like when I was making bath bombs, like I was actually interested in naturopathy. That's kind of like what led me down that path. I was kind of in the like natural healing space. And I loved the business aspect of it. And I did like making the products, but realistically, like in the back of my head, even after getting into like, I was a small business, so I think I was only in like 20 stores or something, but I think in the back of my head, I was like, can I do this forever? Like, is this scalable? Is it worth it? Especially like I was working full-time, I was in school full-time, and I had this business. So it was like every weekend I was up till like 3 a.m, making bath bombs and packaging things, and then getting up at 6 and going to markets and stuff. And I just kind of felt like, I don't know if this is the forever thing for me. And then when I started designing, I remember the first like project I had, I can't remember what company it was, but I was working on like some website wireframes, which for me is like kind of now like not my favorite type of design, but I was doing that and I woke up at 7 excited to do it. And then I like blinked and it was 10 p.m. Like I'd barely peed or like eaten that whole day. So I think that was when I was like, this is it. Like, this is what I can like really devote my like full self to. And I think I'd had lots of like shiny object syndrome, trying to do all these different things and kind of go after all these different ideas. But really, this was the first thing that I was like, this is it. Like, it felt nice. It was kind of the clarity that I'd always been seeking. So I'm glad I tried all these different doors. I wouldn't have gotten here without it. But I mean, there were signs that design could have been a career path for me, but I never really knew that that was a career path. So I just kind of went along the path. But now looking back, I'm like, right. Yeah.
These behaviors that you're talking about, like staying up late without even realizing it and that sort of thing, are definitely entrepreneurial tendencies. I'm curious, was there things like early in life, when you were a kid or anything like that kind of made you realize, or maybe now you can look back on and be like, oh, I was always bound to be an entrepreneur?
Oh my God, so many. I wish I had thought about all the examples in advance, but one of them was I had a very terrible but cool tote bag business in high school. Me and like a bunch of my friends made this business, and I think the name was called Diamonds and Dice. We thought it was like the raddest name. But we made these tote bags, silk screened them, and sold them all throughout our school. I think we made like $1,500 or something, which felt big. Yeah, and then there was lots of examples of me kind of like playing around and puttering around with business stuff. And even like I worked at a pizza place and I loved that job so much. I still dream about that job. I don't know why. Even though I'm celiac and like literally touched flour all day. But this guy who owned this business, he was like a family man, great boss, and he just kind of like let me have free reign. And I always was coming to him with ideas like, oh, people are really into this pizza. What if we do this, this, and this? Or like, what if we change the way that people take takeout so they can buy more? Or whatever. Like I was coming to him with ideas, different like pizza recipes, or even like, I was like, you know what? Our bathroom is like pretty grungy. Can you give me some money and I'll like renovate this bathroom? And I was like 16 and I took a couple $100s from him and like spent the weekend like renovating this customer bathroom, which is ridiculous. But I think I just always was like trying to push things beyond and didn't really know what that behavior would, like what the benefit of that would be. And now I understand.
When you were doing these things, was there any jobs where you were like limited by the capacity of your role or maybe what you were doing and you couldn't kind of push that boundary and renovate the bathroom on the weekend?
Yeah, I think probably like I haven't had many traditional jobs, to be honest. I think I've kind of always like made it something else. But even in like working in a robotics startup, which was super exciting and there's tons of opportunity to like push the boundaries, I think like my lack of knowledge probably hindered me in that area. Cause like I honestly barely knew how to use a computer when I first got that job. And then by the end I was like teaching workshops on how to program robots, which is cool. But also, yeah, I think originally like my lack of knowledge in that area kind of like hindered my marketing capacity a little bit. So I had to kind of rely on everyone else on the team to kind of get me through that. Eventually I started to see my own sort of like natural tendencies come through so I could kind of push it. But yeah, I think knowledge hinders me a lot when I don't have the knowledge to like get to the next level. But I think I can't really think of like traditional jobs that I've had beyond that, to be honest. And that's like not even a traditional job.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that natural like passion or desire to learn is maybe not exclusive, but a key factor in entrepreneurship?
Big time, yeah. Especially, maybe not for everyone, but for me, I think that's like the thing I love the most. Like I thrive on learning new things, and I think I don't know. It's not even exclusive to entrepreneurs. I think it's just. That's like a trait of people that are like hungry for life. And I think, everyone on my team has that. And they might not be like entrepreneurs, but they're hungry. Like they all want to learn. And I think that is kind of what helps businesses survive through hard times, is because having to pivot or having to kind of like expand your knowledge base, you need to be like excited to learn. Like I just can't, I've never been someone who can like force myself to go down a path that I'm not interested in. So I think, I don't know, having a natural interest and like curiosity, I kind of think goes hand in hand with that learning aspect.
Mm-hmm. Especially in creative, because, creative is, you almost are, making a comparison here, but you almost are your own entrepreneur, even when you're working for a creative company, right? Whether it be photography, videography, branding, design, etc., you have to have that hunger and kind of consistently learn.
Yeah.
Because the landscape's always changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like freelancers to that point, like you are owning your own business, even if it doesn't feel like it. I think that's one thing that like came naturally to me that I didn't really realize other kind of creative freelancers struggled with, is like the business part of it. That's the part that I was excited about, rather than like working in-house somewhere. Is like freelancing means you get to kind of call the shots and grow and learn on your own. So I mean, that's obviously a sign that I was meant to own a business, but I don't know. I loved freelancing too. I think I'm better working on the team, but I loved that aspect of like learning, pivoting, making mistakes, and then kind of growing from that. That even those hard times now, like I just look back so fondly on that.
Mm-hmm. There's always that point that you come to as a freelancer, and I'm sure this is not unsimilar to your journey as well, where you come to a point where you maybe you have too much work, maybe you realize that you're highly desired, whatever the case may be, and it's time to think about your first employee.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about that experience for you?
Yeah, I think it happened way quicker than I thought it would. I was expecting to struggle longer, specifically after the first agency. Like when I was starting out on my own, I was definitely imagining that it was like starting from scratch and it was going to be like a struggle for a while. And then it was not. It was like I remember the first, just trying to think, it was the first 3 months after I had launched Grant, and we had like 10K in revenue, and it was just me, 10K in revenue those 3 months, which was a lot for me at the time. And that was like, I was more than full with that amount. So I remember being like, oh, this is taking off like way sooner than I thought. So I think I had to hire help within like 2 months. And then it was just like, it just never really slowed down. Like we've had little moments of like slower months, but it's been like consistently just kind of like, oh, okay, now we're over capacity for a prolonged period of time. We need to add someone. So it's kind of just been like a little stepping stone. We're still small, but I think I kind of want to keep it that way for a little while.
Mm-hmm. That's always interesting to me is kind of future growth and where you see your company's size specifically, not necessarily tied to revenue, but why do you like that small team size?
I think there's like a part of me that loves the like sexy idea of having a huge team and having like, this office just like full of people and being like, oh, we outgrew our office, which we have done once already. But I think I really want to retain that like direct connection with clients for as long as possible. I think there's a reason why like the typical agency model exists, where you have like account directors and project managers and lots of people in between the designer and the client. But I kind of want to avoid that for as long as possible and only go that direction if it's going to improve the work. I think just a small team is better for me right now because everyone that's on my team is so invested in the success, like to a degree that I never anticipated I would have. And like they're directly involved in all the strategy and like the big decisions. We kind of make big calls as a team, which has allowed me, like, I've never had to micromanage. I've never had to kind of like oversee day-to-day stuff too much since having this like core team. Everyone's just so dedicated. So I think it would be hard for me to deviate from that and add people just because. It would be like, they have to be like the right kind of person to, especially with this team, because everyone is so involved in the work. And I think piecemealing the work out doesn't feel great to me. I think that like, I'd rather us be experts in our niche and then, only grow beyond that when it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the idea of like the traditional agency model and kind of where things are going now is very interesting.
Welcome to downtown.
And we're seeing that across the board, from design, also in the video world, same kind of thing. And clients are, leaning towards going more direct to source, right?
Yeah.
Rather than putting all these middlemen in place. How do you feel about that? Obviously, you're pro.
Yeah, definitely pro. And like we've had, we've worked with some like larger companies that you would expect would go with larger agencies. And I used to think that the large agency model was dying. I don't know if that's actually true. I think there's still room for that. But I think there's lots of smaller agencies out of like New York and really kind of like art-centric places that are working for like Nike and Lululemon and like big CPG brands. And they're still like 5-6 person teams because those clients are looking for like the best of the best in that one specific area. And I think I'd rather be that, like just kind of keep it focused.
Mm-hmm. These young designers that are coming up and maybe unsure because that landscape is ever changing, right? So it could be they have the freelance option, they have kind of going a little bit boutique, a small team, mm-hmm. Or like going the agency route. Do you have any advice for, how to navigate that?
Yeah, I think when I can say how I would do it and what I would have done had I not just kind of started a business right away is just take like any opportunity when you're young and just see what you like and don't like. Because I think like there's only learning at that point. There's no kind of failure. So if it were me and I could go back, I think I would try it all. Like I would work with a big agency, I would work with a small boutique agency. I wouldn't do freelancing unless I was really excited about the business aspect, because I think that can be, especially if you literally like you're making a living hinges on that decision. Freelancing is like the hardest option, I would say. It can be it can flow if you have like the right connections and stuff, but some people are just not made for that. And I think that's my lesson. Like my background, I'm involved in I have been involved in the past in some of the like entrepreneurship programs in the city. And my instinct was always to like, how do we make this a business for you? How do we grow this? How do we monetize this? Like always trying to pull people into the entrepreneurship world. And now I'm like 10 years in and I'm like, it's not for everybody. And it doesn't have to be. Like, I think you have to be a specific type of person to continue to do this day after day. And I still think that even just trying it is maybe of benefit. But I think if you're a designer and you just want to design and like that is, and you don't want to have to make kind of big business decisions, then just work for an agency and learn all you can. If you're like excited about the prospect of like trials and tribulations and learnings and hard times, then I mean, why not? And just go for it. And then if you don't get as far as you need to, then you can always go and work for someone, learn, take your time, and then go back to owning your business at some point. But I don't know. I would say for people not to overthink it. Just like apply at places that their values align, and then go for it.
Love it. Why is entrepreneurship so hard?
I mean, I think specifically for me, I can't say for anyone else, it's like you learn the same lessons over and over again. Like there are people better equipped for that than me. Like they might be more disciplined in that aspect, but I think I can literally see like how I've kind of gone back to the beginning on so many decisions. Luckily, I think that spiral goes like this, like it goes upwards and you can kind of see, oh, I'm still making growth, like I'm still making headway. But there's so many times where I've like learned a lesson and been like, oh, right, I underquoted that project and this was my learning from it. And oh, here I am again, underquoting a project that's just slightly bigger and then doing it again and again and again. So I think that like, that's what makes it hard for me. And then also I think you have to be like the right balance of a people person and then being really good at boundaries. And so you kind of have to like play with that a little bit, and that balance between those two things is kind of hard unless you're just naturally that way. But I think I used to be a big people pleaser. So the hard thing was like stressing over having to have a boundary with a client, or stressing over like how to market myself in a way that felt authentic, because I just hated the idea of having to be like skeezy and salesy and have to like cold call someone, and that just didn't feel good to me. But luckily, like all the business that I've gotten that were like cold calls, which I can probably name on one hand, I got every single one of those clients because I was actually genuinely interested in them and what they do. And it might have taken like 4 years, but I worked with them eventually. So I think I was really clear on who I wanted to work with, and I think that served me really well. But entrepreneurship is tough. And you also have to have like a pretty big risk tolerance. And I think I do. By comparison, now that I've like kind of opened myself up to a network that is way bigger than me, like as far as mentors, or kind of like we were talking about with like colleagues and friends and people that own businesses that are way bigger than mine, I can see how my risk tolerance is actually quite low in comparison to some of these bigger businesses. But when I think about people in my family or network that aren't entrepreneurs, they could never make the risky moves that I've made. They think it's just like totally irresponsible. So I think that's a big part of it too.
Yeah, definitely. I'm smiling because I think, there's so many people that go through this people-pleasing aspect. And I think that there's elements of being an entrepreneur that you do need to do that. You need to be personable, you need to be likable, but you also need to be the expert, which sometimes requires, maybe saying the hard thing.
Yes.
Can you walk me through how you learned that?
Oh, my God, that's like my biggest self-development, I think, in this realm. That's like my biggest learning as an entrepreneur, is like how to have that balance. And like, I think it come now, I think like I connect genuinely with clients. I'm genuinely interested in them, and I really want them to succeed. So I think now I've seen enough in my industry and the people that I've worked with, like when I was a younger entrepreneur, younger designer, I would let them call the shots a lot out of my own kind of like lack of confidence in my knowledge. And now, I mean, I think doing the math, like I've worked with over 250 businesses, and I have seen so many of them fail, hopefully not because of anything that we did with them, but I think it's usually some like pretty key mistakes that they make in their messaging or positioning, or even their allocation of funds. And because of my background in entrepreneurship and my degrees in business, I think now I'm much more, I don't want to say forceful, but comfortable calling the shots and telling people when I think their idea might not work. And that I think clients actually quite like that now. Like I've had clients be like, we worked with you because of your business background, or because in the initial like proposal conversation or lead conversation, I'll say like, what's your total funding? And people always dance around that question. They're like, I don't have a budget. I'm like, no. Like, is your budget under 20 grand, or is it like under 100 grand, or is it more than 100 grand? Like, where are you at? Because I can't help you. And then they'll tell me, and I'll be like, okay, here's what I would do. Like, if you have limited funding, don't spend it all on us. Put this much towards branding, put this much towards video, put this much towards an accountant or whatever. If they're that early on, I feel like I've seen the dance enough times that I can help. And then there's people that are way more knowledgeable than me in business that I've worked with. And I've had to be comfortable with like telling them what my gut is saying rather than like comparing knowledge. And I think now I've seen my ideas be right enough times that I can like kind of influence people in a way that feels authentic and isn't just for the sake of it. So I think that exercise is something I will never be perfect at. But also like every time I've really trusted my instincts and kind of like pushed my ideas onto a client, I wish I had a different word for that, but I think every time I've done that, they've loved it. Like I haven't had one time where they've been like, hate it, can't stand it. So I think every time I do that, it gives me more confidence to keep trying and making sure that like the stamp that we put on a project is actually pushing them forward. Because it's all in service of them. Like it would be nice. We don't really apply for like many awards or anything. So maybe we will in the next couple of years, but for right now, like our only way of getting new business is referrals from old businesses. So they have to succeed for us to keep going. So I think that's like I hope that that's like my legacy is helping people actually get to the next stage.
Definitely. Yeah, there's this idea that, well, it's quite common. I'm sure you've experienced this as well, where, the low budget clients that, you're an order taker and you just have to kind of do what they say, and that's their life savings. So it's very stressful for them.
Yeah.
Then once you get over that to the next threshold, they are trusting you, they want your experience and your advice, and they want to be told that they're wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think in our, like, what we've learned, because I love working with small businesses, I think it's not the most, it's not the best way to grow for us, but we do have little service offerings that I think actually are still profitable for us. But with those people, anytime they come to me and they're like, okay, my whole budget for starting this business is the amount that I'm putting towards you, I'm like, don't do it. Like that's not, like branding is so important, but it's not the only thing. And I've seen people blow their whole budgets on branding and fail. And I just don't think that's smart. I think so anyway, I try and like dissuade people from making those decisions when they're really, really small. Because even like they'll spend their whole money on branding, but then no money on execution. So like they have this super sexy logo package, but no money for signage or menus or a website. And then it's like, what's the point of that? We've changed our offerings for small businesses because I think a lot of people think they can DIY stuff that they can't. And then a lot of people just want the sexy brand to give them the confidence to go after the biggest clients they can think of or go market themselves. But it's kind of like chicken before the egg a lot of times, or like an MVP. Like they need to like test their product, test their solution, get feedback before they invest heavily in branding. So small business wise, that's usually like the direction I'm pointing people in. And then to your point, like the higher level of business, I think that's where I can have a lot of fun with kind of like, giving them solutions that I think they haven't thought of and pushing them a little bit beyond their boundaries. And that's where we can have a lot of fun with design, because at that level, like especially if they're like a CPG product, if their product is on the shelves, the only way that they're going to succeed and that the investment they spend on us is going to help them is if they're differentiated and it's like a disruption on the shelf, which is so fun from a design perspective. Like if we design something that blends in, then we failed. So I think when we're working with people at that scale, that's when I really have to push them. And when they kind of embrace that, that's when I see the biggest difference in sales. So that's fun for us.
100%. How do you go about, do you have a criteria for the clients that you work with? Obviously, I think the traditional mentality is that, you service anybody that comes to you, right? But I think at this time that we're living in, it's like there's a lot of options out there, and also taking on a bad client is a horrible thing for the business, right? In multiple facets. So how do you choose who you're going to work with?
Yeah, I think now it's less industry specific. Like, I don't know if it's the same for you, but in our industry, like, it doesn't really matter what the business is. Like, the process is kind of the same. Like, the solution might be different, but our kind of process to getting there is repeatable in most industries. But I think, honestly, I can usually tell in the lead meeting if we're going to be a good fit or not. And now, thankfully, I'm comfortable enough to just say it. Like, to just say, I don't think this is a good fit. And sometimes I give reasons, sometimes I don't. And then, if it's values aligned, and I think they're going to like actually value our work and expertise, then basically they just have to be like a good person that values what we're doing, that's not going to micromanage the process. That's kind of like the main kind of people we work with, and it doesn't really matter what their business is necessarily. I think we have to be interested in it, and it has to be something that we're excited to get behind. Like, we would never work with a company that's like, we would never work with like cigarettes, it's just not our bag. But yeah, I originally, when I first started out, I had very kind of like harsh, specific flags that I would look for, and then literally like have them in lead meetings, like as if we were so sought after that I had that luxury. It did help me kind of develop that sense, but I think now it's not necessarily about that. It's like more of a gut instinct. Like, it's going to be a great project because we're aligned in this way. And I think like the whole lead meeting is just me asking questions, and like diagnosing rather than like trying to win them over. So I think like I can learn a lot about someone and their trajectory by just asking a ton of questions. And that like perspective of not really caring about selling someone, that's what I like. Yeah. This is literally, you should hear it in there. It's like, I have a bucket underneath the radiator that collects all of the water. Nice. That just spurts out of it. 150 years old.
Love it.
Yeah.
Was it ever hard to say no to clients? So maybe the first couple times you did it, you're in your mind, maybe you're a young entrepreneur, maybe new to it, and it's just, how are you going to say no to money? Right?
Yes. So it's so hard. It still is so hard. I had to decline a project a couple months ago, and I just like, it just made me sick to my stomach. Like, and especially it was a big client, and I was like, it's not going to be a good fit. It's not going to be a good project for either of us. I'm not even going to do a proposal. And I was like sick to my stomach about it for like a full 24 hours. And then I woke up and was like, I just got to bite this bullet, sent them a nice email, and that was that. But yeah, it's still hard. I don't imagine it's going to get any easier for me.
Mm-hmm. In a business where trust and relationship is so crucial and important, not only from yourself to the client, but I'm sure your staff also work with your clients directly as well. How do you go about finding the right staff and making sure there's alignment in you and them, and your company values in them as well?
Yeah. I think I've been really lucky. So I'm not sure that I used to think I had a really smart formula for hiring, but I don't know that I do. I think I just have like good instincts. But most of the people that I've hired, I'll interview, however many applicants, drill it down to like a top 3 that I think are more aligned. And once they get to that point, they're kind of values aligned. Like we've gone through the company values, like I've asked them what they value in an employer. We've kind of drilled it down to kind of be on the same page. And obviously at that point, everyone's good. Like they already have their portfolios. We already looked over their work and stuff. But then when we get to that point, I give them each a paid project that's the same timeline, same amount of hours, same pay, and literally just compare apples to apples as if like I'd never talked to them. And that's resulted in like really great people. But we also have like Ricky on our team that did not happen at all. And in fact, she was not even a designer when I met her. She had no knowledge of the industry. And then she just taught herself. And then we kind of stayed in contact. And then there was one week where we were just slammed, like absolutely slammed with work. And out of like sheer panic, I called her and was like, what are you doing this week? Can you just come in and kind of pinch it? And she was excited. She came in, she pinch hit, and like the work that she was doing after only being a designer for like, I think only a couple months, I was like, wow. Because I look at so many portfolios like all the time, so I can really like tell basically right away. Like even like a first glance of a portfolio, I can see glimpse. And like looked at her work and it was amazing. And then when she came in pinch hit, she was like a perfect fit. I could just tell. So yeah, I think there's just something to that like feeling of like seamlessness between people. That's what has made our team work so well. And maybe one day we'll need something totally different. Like we'll need someone to come in and totally disrupt the way we do things. But right now it's working really well.
Yeah, there's so much more than technical skill, I think,
Yeah,
and there's, especially in the creative industry, technical skill is one thing, but sometimes creatives are too stuck in their own ways and they can't, they moving from an individual to brand work is a big step and that sort of thing. So what else do you look for beyond technical skill to make sure that, these people are going to best fit your team?
I think it's what we talked about earlier, which is that like eager to learn thing. That is like not inherently in everyone. And when it is, it's kind of like boundless. If you have that, you can be good at anything, I think. So I'm always looking for people that are like teaching themselves things. Like I don't really care if someone doesn't know a certain software. I mean, they obviously have to know like basic software, but yeah, like Ricky's a good example. She's taught herself everything and I taught myself everything as well. Like I didn't go to design school. And we've like really embedded that in our culture as well. We have these kind of like little meetings every month called show and tell. And they're like 30 minutes long. Everyone comes with a 5-minute, like quick and dirty presentation of a new like trick in Illustrator that they've learned or a new project out in the world that's really inspiring. And then we teach each other things. And I love that. And I always kind of in the back of my mind, I'm like, am I forcing this down my team's throats? Like, do they even like this? And then we had our year-end strategy meeting and they like requested that those continue. Like they were like, let's not lose focus on those. We really like them. Yeah, so I think I'll always attract people that are like that because I'm like that and because our team's like that. And I think that's just a good way to grow your expertise on a small team. And I think if you're not that type of person, you wouldn't work on a small team. You would work for like a big agency that has probably better pay, better benefits, maybe like a little less opportunities for learning.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The agency model, you might get paid a lot more, but there's so many things that you miss. And
Yeah.
like you said, like those monthly meetings. Why are those important, and why is like camaraderie and community and culture within a team important?
I mean, I feel like other than just making it an enjoyable place to work, I think it results in better design. I think the more comfortable you are with each other, the more you can push each other in a way that's still motivating. Like, I don't know, maybe other people thrive in an environment where like you're critiqued in a negative way. But I think for us, we've like learned how to really push each other in a positive way. And it's all in service of like the work being better and better. So I think that requires having that camaraderie and like being connected to each other and knowing how to kind of get the best out of each other. And I don't want that to go away. It might, maybe it'll get harder if we're like a huge team eventually, but that's kind of my hesitance of growing too big is I think that makes the work better, and I don't want to lose that.
Have you ever just butchered a project?
Butchered?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, early days, me alone for sure. Trying to think of, like, I had this project where maybe, like, I think the actual brand was okay, but the packaging just, oh God, it was just like a dumpster fire disaster because I didn't have enough knowledge in packaging. So we like went to the printer, got something printed. I didn't have any knowledge of like paper stock and how that type of like ink interacted with the paper stock. So it was like it bled everywhere and then it cracked and then we printed over the whole thing. And as soon as you folded it all, the print just like cracked off. And the client had spent like their whole budget, which is another reason why I like don't do that anymore, on the branding. So we couldn't reprint it and the boxes just looked terrible. And then we got them reprinted eventually. And then I realized like the scale was all wrong. I've probably butchered like a ton of work in my early days because I just didn't know. Like even the importance of like printing something on our shitty office computer and then like folding it, in person and taping it all together to see the scale and like how something would interact. That's like super important. Or even like doing like window decals on a client's like exterior. That's like you have to actually go and take a picture of it, put the design on there, see how it looks, see how it might look from different angles, see what it looks like at night. Like there's so much that you don't think about, especially when you're slammed and you're first starting out. You're like, well, just get out the door. And that is a huge mistake. And I think I've also learned, like in my bath bomb business, back in the day, I had this like what I thought was a super brilliant idea. They were all like cake slice shaped bath bombs. And so I made them in like full little cakes and then sliced them. And I started making like custom birthday cakes for clients. So they would be like a birthday cake bath bomb. So they had all these slices in them and I would write like happy birthday or happy 70th or whatever in like my icing recipe, which is like a cocoa butter or coconut oil thing. And it looked like a cake. And anyway, so I made this, it was my first one. I sold it to like a client who came to me every week and bought bath bombs. And I was so excited to like launch this idea off the ground. So I made the cake, it was beautiful, and then sliced it, and then I brought it to the market and didn't consider like the blazing heat and how that would impact the icing. But basically what happened is it all cracked off and melted. So she came and I was so excited to give her the cake, but I was also like, I had a lineup of like 20 people and was just trying to navigate it all. And so she paid her like, I think it was like $80 or something for this cake. Gave her the cake, she opened it, and it was all just like a freaking mess, like just cracked and all over the place. And she was so disappointed. And in my haste to like get her out of there and like handle all these other clients, I was like, what you could do is just like heat up a spoon and put the icing like back on. And she looked at me like, are you freaking kidding me? Which like rightly so. And she left with it and I felt so terrible. And I realized in that moment like how I'll never do that again. Like if you screw up something like that, stop everything you're doing, stop the press, like focus on that person, remedy that situation, and like never brush them off. Because it wasn't authentic to me at the time anyway, but I think I was just overwhelmed with all of the decisions I had to make. And yeah, so that was a big lesson for me. And I think that's translated even to now. Like that $80 mistake is like, if we ever make a mistake, it's like, I don't care what it costs. I don't care, if we miss the mark, like we do it again. There's no like, well, there you go.
Yeah, too bad.
Yeah.
Fair enough. When you do make a mistake, do you think? Well, I guess there's two trains of thought, right? There's like you move slow, very calculated. You kind of figure everything out before you do anything, which is a slower approach. Or you move very fast and you learn from those mistakes. Which kind of school of thought do you typically fall under?
We have kind of designed our packages for two types of people, one in each of those categories. So there's like the people that want to be methodical and want to take their time and want revisions and want like months to kind of be able to consider things. So that's like our big offerings. And then we have these little sprints that are like 5-7 day like quick projects where there's basically no revisions. They have to be very decisive, and I just let them choose, and that has been so nice. Just release that from my shoulders. Like I don't have to worry. Like they choose their own adventure. Obviously, it has to be right for them, so I'll kind of like direct them if I feel like they need something else. But that I love letting people choose what works for them, because we have some people where we'll present them, two different kind of visual identities, and they're like, that one, package it up, done. And then we have people who are like, need a lot of revisions, they need a lot of reassurance, they need a lot of like validation, and that's fine. And I love working with people, so I think that's totally fine. But those two people, it's hard to price those two people the same and manage your cash flow. So I think like, I'll just explain that to people. Like, which camp do you think you're in? Like, what has your experience been like in the past, and what will work better for you? And I think that's served me really well. I think like not taking that burden on myself has really helped our cash flow and kind of like our timelines. And I think that's letting people choose their own adventure is like the only way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That comes with a lot of like understanding of the client, and also being able to brief your team on, these are two different schools of thought. And is that hard on your team to kind of make that difference where, one project might be kind of this way set in stone, the other might be completely different?
I think it's only hard because we always try and do more than we're getting paid for. So I think like they're, very capable of managing that whole process, and they're very flexible, and they're super smart. So like I don't think they struggle necessarily in like the granular level of things. But we just really have to like hold ourselves back from like, working late at nights and like working on weekends and like putting in tons of extra hours. I think we've actually done a pretty good job in the last couple of years of balancing that, but it's always like every single person on our team, it's our instinct to like do more. And I think we always will anyway, but basically I'm trying to I'm such a data freak, and I think when I do our numbers, like that there's like a 25% range that is like doable in that, where we go 25% over, but not 200% over. Like there's just no way to manage that if we go that far beyond. And there's no way for us to grow and make sure everyone's paid well and like get benefits and all that kind of stuff if we're doubling our time every single time. So yeah, we're learning how to make things more efficient and still kind of feel like we're delivering more than we said we would. Like we're very much like under promise, over deliver, which I think sounds nice and sounds kind of like, the right way, except for that it can totally screw over business. So we've had to learn how to like manage that and make, really sell what we're doing in the right way so that people know what to expect. Because like one of the feedback pieces we got for years was like, wow, I had no idea how much I would get for that package. And that was such a thing of pride for me. Such a thing of pride for me to be like, oh, we're giving them more, until I realized how much that was like self-sacrificing. Mm-hmm. So now we're trying to balance it out. Like, okay.
It's a bit of a double-edged sword, right? Because you want to give the most, and that's the value that you can provide, but you're also setting a precedent that this is what they can expect for the same rate or whatever the case may be going forward. And that's tough to manage.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah. As an entrepreneur, somebody who's making decisions that affect other people, and late nights and all these different things that we go through as entrepreneurs, do you ever feel lonely, or that you're alone in kind of the decision making and that sort of thing?
Not really. No, I don't know. I don't know what I have done to be kind of blessed in that way, but no, not really. I feel like I have a team that's like really has my back, and I value like group mentality so much, and like inevitably the decisions usually are mine to make, but I think I love problem solving so much, and I think that's like probably why I've stayed in this so long. But I think like I bring problems to the team and we make solutions together. Like it's maybe every once in a while I'm like, okay, here's what we're doing. But I think people need buy-in. Like I would need buy-in, especially on a small team, to do this every day and to do it for like probably less than you would make in a corporate job. end with like a lot more involvement. So I think I really value having like their brains on it. And I mean, I think I don't know the quote, but like that Steve Jobs mentality of like hire good people and then let them do their jobs. That's kind of what I subscribe to. Is they're smart, they have industry knowledge. In fact, they've worked at more agencies than I ever did. So I really value getting like collective feedback and then kind of filtering it, being like, okay, based on all these opinions, let's go this direction. But yeah, I love that aspect of a team, is kind of like having a bunch of smart people make moves together.
Mm-hmm. Let them do the job.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We were talking a little bit off camera about that we're both in EO and you know, part of a community that's of similar minded people. Is that important to you?
Yeah, it is. I think more and more, I think I've valued having people from different backgrounds and like different perspectives that can offer me something that I wouldn't think of. Because I like in the past, I've been like really known to be like looking for someone to give me the answer I want. And I think I've totally broken that habit. Like now I'm comfortable not having that. And in fact, I kind of like thrive on that, is getting like lots of different feedback. But yeah, having people at the level of business that I'm at and beyond really has inspired me. So I think groups like EO and even just like entrepreneurs in general in Calgary, they, at least in my experience, they're very open to having like a coffee, or even like email questions. Like I have lots of clients that have now become friends and or like mentors, and I'll email them randomly for questions. Even competitors, like all of the competitors in my industry, at least like the core ones that I can think of, I can't even tell you how many times I've emailed them for advice. And they all respond. Like they all take the time to respond, which I feel like is just so wild. Like you think that it's going to be really cutthroat, but it's not actually. It's like very supportive. And maybe it's because that's what I put out there. I don't know that that's everyone else's experience, but I love it. I just feel like there's enough work for everyone. And so it's just always been, I've always had like a very friendly experience with different community members and mentors, and yeah.
Yeah, I love that note about competitors, and I think we're starting to hear that more frequently in specifically in the creative industry. But I'm curious, do you think that's, you know, maybe that's a geographical thing? Calgary is just like that. Do you think it's an industry thing, or do you think maybe that's just the way the world's going? Is more collaboration?
I mean, obviously, I have limited knowledge in this because we're mostly just in Canada, but I think it's just the way the world's going. Like we have more than half of our clients are in Vancouver. And I can basically trace all that back to one person, one team that we worked with, and they just tell everyone about us. And like they'll intro us to so many people, expecting nothing in return, and vice versa. Like we do that for them. But yeah, that's like how we've grown our business, is just like a bunch of people, a lot of women, to be honest. Like a lot of female entrepreneurs are very keen to see other female entrepreneurs succeed. And so we've had a ton of great partnerships and referrals through people that are just like genuinely want us to succeed. So I and vice versa. Like I'm always looking for like freelancers or like smaller agencies than us that we can refer to. And I don't know, it just feels very holistic and easy, like to just be part of that kind of like cyclical referral network. And community network. And I think EO is kind of the same thing, is we're all very open to working with each other. That's what I've seen, is just like a lot of support in a way that feels very authentic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that the idea about referrals, right? And that's key, because a referral is worth way more than, you know, a paid ad hitting the wrong person or whatever the case may be. Do you have a strategy for doing that? Is it just taking care of the customer? Is there like a process that you go through afterwards to kind of, you know, spur referrals or anything?
We have no referral strategy whatsoever, which is not a good thing. But I think what I have done right and what the team has done right is we just really try and make sure every project we work on, we do our best and work really well with the client. We work with really good people, so I think it's easy to have like a good relationship with easy people. But yeah, I think every client we've genuinely connected with, and like for the most part, all of our projects, we stay in touch with them like out of genuine interest, not like part of a CRM. Like we don't have a CRM, so I don't even know how to use a CRM, but it's just like, you know, even clients where like they might post something that's like a graphic and we're like, ugh, no, that's not, like we can kind of consider ourselves creative directors for life with clients. So even if they're not paying us, we're kind of like keeping an eye on things. And we've emailed people and been like, just a suggestion. First of all, like this direction, see where you're going with it, and like bit of a correction is needed. So we'll kind of like keep in touch with people. And our whole team is just like ideas people. So we'll be out and about and like take a picture of something and put it in Slack and be like, you know, it'd be so cool if this client did this, or, oh, it'd be so cool if they did this like gift package for their clients or whatever. And so, and I like nothing lights me up than when the team does that, because my brain thinks that way. So whenever the team is like, oh, you know, it'd be so cool as if this client did this kind of campaign, here's a good example, and I'm like, email that to them right now. Like, don't worry about how the email sounds. It doesn't have to be overtly professional. Just send them the idea, and that's gone a long way. Like, our clients love that. So even if it's annoying, they're like, ooh, they just love that we're invested.
It's showing that you care, right?
Yeah.
It's building that relationship and that trust that we established earlier, talked about earlier.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I don't know what that looks like on a huge scale, and maybe it is doable on a big team, but I think that's another reason why I'm keen to like stay smaller for longer, is to like maintain that type of connection.
How do you go about prioritization and managing time? It's obviously a big challenge. You're a new mother. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
You have a lot on your plate, I'm sure, in that regard, and then also with your business, you know, the long hours, that sort of thing. Do you have any strategies for prioritization?
I mean, this is all like a new journey for me now. Like, it's a totally different level of prioritization. I have been very structured with my schedule in the past, like way too much so. And now it's like not up to me. So I think what I'm learning is like, first of all, when the motivation hits, like stop everything, just do the work, no matter what time it is, which is totally different than I was in the past. Like, I was like, you know, in the office 7:38 and then 5, like close the laptop, and then like that was it. And I think that worked for me because I was like, I need balance. I want this to last a long time. Like, burnout does not serve me. So I think I had a really good structure. And now it's like, okay, wake up at 5:30, baby stuff, start doing work at 6:30, get interrupted at 7, start doing work stuff at 9, get interrupted. You know, it's like all day. And then like working on Saturdays and Sundays intermittently as well. But I think there's a certain flow that I'm finding in that. It's just like, when I need a nap, I take a nap. When I need to work, I work. And I think overall I'm working probably more than I thought I was when I was thinking about having a baby. But it feels flowy in a way that I wasn't used to. Like, I loved the structure that I had before, and now I'm like, okay, it's different. But yeah, I don't have time management. I think what I've learned is that I can rely even more on my team than I thought I could, because I took a few weeks off, like originally, after giving birth, and
10 weeks ago.
Yeah, 10 weeks ago. And we had our best month ever, like of all time. So it was like, you know, and probably, you know, slightly unfairly so, they had a lot more on their plate than what this team should have had on their plate, but I think now it's kind of balancing out again, and we'll probably be looking to add like a project manager pretty quickly, just to make sure everything is balances out even more. But like time management wise, I think I've released a lot and also taken a lot out of my repertoire. That I'm like, is that important? Is it pushing us forward, or is that like a shiny object? I'm like, out. So it's like really focusing on what's critical. And Michelle Pelizon, who's someone I really look up to, she's got a business in the States called Holisticism. Perfect example, barely knows me, and I emailed her and was like, I have some questions about being a mother and having a business and like how to grow. And she had like a 2-hour call with me where she just went through like so many practical tips and tricks. And I've honestly had probably like 10 different conversations like that with female entrepreneurs who are like, okay, here's what I did. I had this schedule, I had this, like I had a nanny at this phase, blah, 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 blah. And I think having all of that has really helped me kind of navigate this phase. And she was a good example of someone who was like, okay, eliminate all of these things. They don't matter. Like, here's your core revenue stream. Focus on that and get rid of all the fluff. And that's exactly what we had to do, is like get rid of all the excess.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I love that you had your best month ever during that time. That's
wild.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a correlation between, maybe trusting the team a little bit more, maybe a little bit more delegation, and were you surprised by kind of the step up that it existed or occurred?
I was surprised for sure. I think the correlation of like trust, like, to be honest, I don't think there is a connection, because I've trusted them that fully before. I think it honestly is like just aligned with the amount of work we had, and like these big contracts that we're getting, it kind of like all lined up at that time. And they rocked it. Like, I'm not surprised, to be honest, but I also kind of, it felt really good for me, because, having to step away for the short time that I did and not having enough work, that would be way worse than having way too much work. And I mean, we've kind of stepped into this new era of like charging more and having less work, which is good. And that's kind of what happened, is like we made this transition. I was like, okay, we had this strategy meeting, and as a team, we all determined like what's not working and like what do we need, what does the future look like? And the future looked like more money for less work. And so all of us together, like the team is managing their own scope in such a dedicated way that has made a huge difference. So I feel like that, for that reason, like as far as, I wouldn't say it's like necessarily a trust thing, but just them taking that off my plate to be managing scope probably better than I do. That's helped our revenue a lot, is for them to be like, okay, we said we were going to spend 3 hours on this. We need 2 more hours. Do we want us to move forward? Yes or no, or whatever that looks like. I think that's helped a lot. And that impresses me a lot, because I feel like I struggled with that, and I've been doing that for 10 years. So
it's such a counterintuitive concept, right? Like, doing less and making more.
Yeah.
But I feel like it kind of goes back to our earlier conversation about that, low budget order taking and then moving into this expert space. And there's plenty of books that talk about the first million, and then the next, is a hard step, and then $1 million to $100 million is the same concept, right? So it's super interesting.
Yeah, big time.
Do you ever experience creative block or ruts in how you go about things, and maybe you're just not inspired to create?
Yeah, I do, like all the time. And I think I have a pretty good handle on how to get myself out of that. So I think it doesn't feel as stressful anymore. Like early days, that was like the worst case scenario, is to be like, oh my God, I have no ideas and I'm not inspired. I don't know what to do. Now I'm like, okay, now I just have to do these X amount of things and I'm back in the game.
What are those things?
I think it's like analog stuff, like get out of my computer, not necessarily the library. I honestly have not spent very much time in the library at all, which is sad, but going to like old bookstores or like antique stores, or like basically anything that's physical out in the world, like books that we have in the office. We have like, I've invested a good amount on like design books, architecture books. It doesn't take me very long. Like I could honestly take an hour of just like going out and looking at stuff, even like looking at in the building that we have. Like there's areas of this building that are like weird, and then there's areas of this building that are like stunning. And just looking at like the tile work, or like the radiators that are like kind of beautiful and hideous at the same time. There's like little elements of that it gets me excited. It doesn't take me much to be like, oh, okay, I'm like back in. I can't wait to try this again. And I think I've learned over time too, is like to not be a perfectionist in the ideation phase. It's just like, get it out, sketch it out. Don't worry about it being perfect. And I've learned how to like identify which ideas are good over time. And I think like releasing stress from like making something perfect quickly helps you make something perfect quickly, which is kind of like a weird self-development thing you have to get over. But I think like getting out of my laptop is the quickest way.
Yeah, like stop trying to force the creation and just experience the beauty and design that is around you.
Exactly. Yeah, and I get so excited about design that it's not hard for me. Maybe people that are like a little bit more stoic might struggle, but I just get like, ooh, like I just can't wait. Even just going to like a cafe and like seeing their signage or like, their the way that the space is designed or their little like business cards, even things that are bad. Like I'm look at, I'm like, ugh, like how could I do that better? And that inspires me. So I think I honestly am like have no shortage of inspiration usually. So it's kind of like I have to like bottle it a little bit more to stay focused, basically.
That's a good problem to have.
Yeah, exactly.
What does success look like to you?
I think it's changed over time. I think a big like what I probably wouldn't have thought was such a strong motivator for me is my team feeling secure, taken care of, like that they're paid well, like having like, and I have had like almost no turnover. So I think that is like my biggest success indicator. And I don't expect that people are going to stay with me forever and ever. But the fact that this good of people have stayed with me for this long is like, wow, like that's like a badge of pride for me. So I think that's kind of like a cheesy answer, but I think that has really motivated me and given me confidence that I'm doing some things right. So I think I am motivated by revenue. Like I think I'm more now, so more motivated by profit. I think like having a healthy engine running has motivated me more than I thought it would. And then our product's getting better and better. That's like a success indicator to me is like, we more than ever before, we're getting people that like know our work, and we'll say like specifically like, oh, this project I love, or we'll get people, and we get a lot of applications too, which I don't know if that's a success factor because I think the job market is like hard right now, but it does feel good. Like it feels good to get so many applications and like to the point where I can't respond to them all, which I hate because I would hate that if I was on the other end. But I think that feels like we must be doing something right, is that like people want to work with us and people want to work for us. And also I get really motivated by what we're doing poorly. So I think that's like, all of those together get me excited. And I think that's like, having metrics is important to me, but also like staying in that realm of like, here's what we're doing good, here's what we need to do better. Like that kind of like juxtaposition really motivates me to keep going.
Yeah, I love that. I think too many people forget about the negative reinforcement motivation. Right?
Yeah. Some people aren't motivated by that, but I definitely
am. The desire to improve goes back full circle, right?
Yeah.
Aislinn, where can we send people to follow along what's next and what's coming down the pipeline for you guys?
I think so. Our website, so wearegrant.com. Instagram, wearegrant. I think it's we.r.grant. And then we've put like a decent amount of effort into our newsletters every month. And I think that's a good place for people to actually like interact with us on a more intimate level. We're on TikTok, so kind of. We're learning. Like I honestly, God, it's so hard. That's the hardest part, especially we have a 4-day work week. So it's like really hard to do the work and then like the work behind the scenes, like the marketing. And I would say that like, we're not best in the world at marketing our own stuff, to be honest, but it's just like, I value people having like a 4-day work week over that. And so far it's working, but maybe check in with me in a few years.
It's funny when, the challenge of being in marketing, that's ultimately what, the creative industry is
so hard.
But we can't do it ourselves.
Yeah, so hard. So hard on a small team. Like I can see why having a larger team would have its advantages, but.
Totally. Aislinn, thank you so much for the conversation today. I truly, truly appreciate it. And
of course.
I'm very grateful for your time.
Thank you so much.